feeling like they're being overtaxed. They're feeling like they're not making enough. And they are tearing up the streets of Germany trying to make a point to their prime minister and their leaders that they're not going for the tax raise. Let's tune into the video and see what's going on with these protests in Germany.
From quiet fields to busy city streets, farmers around the world have launched protests in recent weeks. They're demanding relief from what they say is a crisis. Ali Rogan reports on what's driving these protests and what it means for food supply and climate policies.
They come in convoys of tractors, armed with the fruits, bread, even the livestock of their labor. From Italy to India, farmers are taking to the streets, sometimes facing violence, sometimes causing it, protesting policies they say kill their livelihoods.
Agriculture has been on its knees for a long time, and we have reached the end of our rope.
In fact, farmers in dozens of countries on 6 continents have been staging protests since 2021. This year, most protests have been in European countries and India. The grievances vary by country, but there's one common message. Farmers can no longer bear the burden of economic and climate policies.
There's a sense of a rupture in the social contract between farmers and their governments.
Danielle Resnick is a senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute.
In the EU, it's a sense that farmers are being forced to unfairly bear the burden of a lot of the EU regulations to meet climate emission targets. In India, there's a sense that farmers are overburdened. They're worried about various shocks, including climate shocks, and they want some type of social protection.
In Europe, those regulations include limits on pesticides and the amount of land they can harvest annually. Farmers there also worry about competition from abroad and Ukraine, which has temporary tariff-free access to EU markets.
Stop zbożu z Ukrainy.
Stop grain from Ukraine. Stop the Green Deal. Stop deciding about our land.
Now, I never heard anything like this before. I've heard of protests because of rights. I've heard of protests because, people don't like who's in charge. But I've never heard of farmers taking out their hands and saying, we got to protest because we're not getting enough grains. We're not making enough grains, and the agriculture is messed up, and we're not profiting. We're not profiting. And I think that's every farmer's goal. I think that's every business owner's goal, is to be profitable. But if the government is making it hard for you to be profitable in an industry, especially like this, where you're feeding millions and millions of people because of this, that's a tough position to be in. And I can see why they're upset. And this is not just happening in Germany now that we're hearing this. It's happening all throughout the world.
In India, farmers want Prime Minister Narendra Modi to expand a long-standing policy of setting prices for certain crops. In 2021, Modi tried but failed to scrap the policy following an earlier round of protests. Farmers have been marching from the north, where the protests began, to the capital, but police and soldiers have blocked their way.
It is not about whether we go to Delhi or not. We have not come here to clash with our soldiers. We just want our demands met for a law regarding the implementation of the minimum support price.
Experts say the protests are politically timed. Both the Indian and European Parliament elections are set for this spring.
I think farmers' unions are being politically savvy in some ways and trying to get their issues on the top of the political agenda. Even though we think of them as kind of small-scale farmers, they are pretty politically powerful.
And ahead of the votes, leaders seem to be listening to the farmers. France scrapped a plan to end tax breaks for tractor diesel, and the EU abandoned a plan to reduce pesticide use and postponed a deadline for farmers to leave some land fallow to improve biodiversity.
Well, it's working. The protests are working. They got some stuff going on for them, but I guess it's still not enough. It's still not enough. They want some more regulations, and This is crazy. We got to stay in tune with what's going on with the farming and the agriculture industry all throughout the world, because this could possibly affect our neighborhoods.
It also omitted farmers from a recommendation to reduce greenhouse gases by 90% by 2040.
Farmers need a worthwhile business case for nature enhancing measures. Perhaps we have not made that case convincingly.
But many stakeholders, like some European moderates and environmentalists, believe politicians are caving to farmers to prevent them from deepening alliances with far-right groups who've taken up their cause. And they note that agriculture is a major driver of climate change, accounting for more than 10% of the EU's total greenhouse gases.
I think an attack of the green agenda is seen as really an opportunity for right-wing parties to gain more seats in the parliament at the expense of green parties.
Listen, I know a lot of people think that climate change and the climate crisis has to do with all the oil and natural gases and gases that is going throughout the air, but honestly, I just think that the climate is based on what God chooses for that specific day. Yes, obviously, if there's stuff going on in the air, it might affect a certain area, but when it's all said and done, it's all being controlled by the creator.
They see this as an opportunity to really mobilize on grievances, to perhaps forward their own agenda around migration policies and other types of nativist policies that would resonate with some of EU farmers' concerns.
But some experts say leaders must find ways to make the transition less burdensome for farmers and the entire system they represent.
Most of the world's food is produced by small farms, family farms, and they're the ones who don't have the depth, the financial depth, and the resources to really shoulder this burden in the way that they're being asked to. They are being asked to adjust to environmental regulations in a fast period of time.
Chris Hagedorn is a professor of global food politics at Sciences Po in Paris.
This is where governments can step in and start spending money differently to address the cost, not only to these farmers, but the cost that we're seeing from environmental damage, climate change, temperature increases, violent weather increases.
After all, as the protesters' signs say, without farmers, there is no food.
Without farmers, there is no food. And it's true. It's true. We're going to keep in touch with what's going on throughout the industry of agriculture, because, like I said, it could possibly be affecting our neck of the woods soon. I know that's it's not in the U.S. right now, but the world does get their grains from certain places. The world does get their sugar canes from certain places. The world gets their rice from certain places, their flour, their wheat. And if those places are being affected, it could possibly affect what's going on throughout the entire world. If farmers say we're not going to do this, a lot of people would be out of a lot of food, a lot of food. So we'll keep in touch with what's going on with that situation, going on in Germany and all throughout the world with the farmers. Hopefully they get what they need, and hopefully they get the answers and the regulations that they're looking for, so we can continue to just keep this train pushing along.